Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the patch 11.05 has been around for a couple of weeks now, and this was one of the bigger updates that brought with it a ton of class changes, like a talent revamp for Elemental Shaman, a talent revamp for Arcane Mage, a bunch of hero talent adjustments, but also with the following weeks after the release of 11.05, we also got to see plenty of class tuning, but also even more patch notes as they're trying to figure out the balancing for the rest of the Season 1. And 11.05 definitely left its mark and brought a bit of a shake-up to the Mythic Plus meta to some degree, especially when it comes to tanks and healers, but it more or less helped stabilize and even solidify potentially what may end up being the best Mythic Plus dungeon combination of classes if you're trying to push for endgame content. So in this video, I wanted to take a closer look at which classes are performing the best when it comes to Mythic Plus dungeons in 11.05, since right now is a pretty good time to get some ults up and running, and you might as well play some of the classes that are more popular and are performing fairly well if you're ever looking to take a break from your current main. As always, if you guys want to see more videos like these for the War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe, but otherwise, let's dive right in. So in no particular order, I do want to start this video off by going over the healers first, mostly to highlight the class of Shaman, which will be a reoccurring offender, or I guess maybe the hero of every single dungeon group out there, with the class of Shaman probably being the most popular class as an all-rounder so far for Season 1 of War Within, at least within the patch 11.05, especially after the Elemental and Enhancement got a handful of new talents, but even Restoration got a little bit more love as well. Healers right now for most players are a bit of a struggle to get into for Season 1 of War Within, as the requirements for what a healer must do in each group has gotten much higher. So if you are going to be picking up a healer, most players prefer to pick something that's going to make most dungeon encounters as easy as possible. And Shamans right now got the best kit for it. As a class, between the right buff and the brink, there also a very good variety of different totems that have very specific uses, like a stun totem with the Guardian Cudgel for multiple CC chains, or potentially a Windrush totem that can remove snares, which can even bypass certain mechanics. Totems like Tremor are only good for fears, but in certain situations you need a fear breaker, and they can be insanely valuable during those moments. And even someone specialized as poison cleansing is extremely good whenever you need to remove poisons as soon as possible. So they got the Swiss Army knife when it comes to group utility, and they bring just about everything to the table, from interrupts, additional crowd control, passive damage, but also all these totems that are exceptionally good in very key situations. This combined together with a fantastic array of a variety of defensive cooldowns that they can bring for the group, whether it is Spirit Link Totem or any of the major totems such as a Healing Tide, potentially Ascendance, or any of the damage procs that they can combine together in order to get a lot of burst healing for the rest of the party. It gives them a very powerful kit where they can just throw a cooldown at different dangerous situations, which makes them also very pug friendly, and Restoration has generally been the most reliable choice of most healers when it comes to building a group for Mythic Plus dungeons. However, technically, Disc Priest is actually the best healer right now, especially if you're trying to push within the meta of Season 1. But it does require a handful of classes to be part of that group in order to really let Disc Priest shine. Specifically, Disc Priest require for Protection Paladin to be your tank as part of that Mythic Plus group. Disc Priests have a lot of issues that really makes them generally worse than Restoration Shaman unless you help set up and counter some of those issues with other class utility. Disc Priests, for example, are not very mobile. They have very low number of personal defenses that they can utilize, but Protection Paladin is known for its utility and helps cover a lot of the issues that would arise by having a Discipline Priest in your group, which counters a lot of the negatives that a Disc Priest brings, allowing Disc Priests to bring out their full flurry of damage, which is what really makes him good right now. Not only is the damage of the Void Weaver Disc Priest is fantastic and really helps you output quite serious numbers, but also you bring PI, which should further elevate your group's overall damage output. So Disc Priest ideally is technically the best healer in the current meta, but it really needs a right setup and a right comp in order to really see that healer spec shine brightly. Moving on from there, we have a couple of tank choices, mostly Protection Warrior and Protection Paladin. Protection Warrior is a very solid all-rounder tank that brings with it a ton of defense, whether it is against physical damage, but also plenty of cooldowns to deal with a variety of magic damage abilities, and its overall came out to be the sturdiest tank from the alpha and the beta of this expansion, and that continued to hold a strong front and be really a vanguard, gaining a lot of popularity during the early days of War Within. This combined together with a fantastic array of personal damage output that they could put up pretty regularly with a very short CD for most of their offensive cooldowns, plus abilities such as Spell Reflect can also be incredibly good on certain key encounters. However, it looks like the days of Protection Warrior may potentially be numbered, with Protection Paladin really taking a fold. This tank class, out of all of them, started at the rock bottom when War Within launched, and its performance in the alpha and beta was absolutely atrocious, though it was tuned over time, especially for 1105 with the Paladin getting a class talent refresher. Protection Paladin saw a lot of those baseline talents that make the spec good not only tuned up, but basically made a baseline. So right now, defensively speaking, Protection Paladins are about even compared to all of the other tanks, which is what really held them back for a good bit. And for ages, Protection Paladins have always had an edge when it comes to utility, especially compared to other tanking options, which always gives them a little bit of an advantage. And now that they are just as tanky as everybody else, now they're tanky and have more utility than most other tanking options. This combined together with their overall playstyle adjustments, where they have fantastic AoE damage during peak bursts, which is very important in the current meta, allows Protection Paladins to shine right now. And especially combined together with the Disc Priest, it is the only tank that can really make Disc Priest work, which makes it even more of a reliable combo. From there on, I do want to move on to the melee DPS classes, and out of all the melee DPS, 3 classes stand out, especially as we start to get towards some of the higher, more difficult Mythic Plus dungeons. Towards the bottom of that melee popularity lies the class of Rogue, which is mostly played as Assassination with some output as Outlaw as well. And Rogue is basically a very standard melee option that could fit a variety of different group compositions, with rogues having access to superior defenses from immunities, but also plenty of opportunity for damage reductions, especially with some of the more defensive buffs that rogues have gotten over this last update. While Rogue does not have the highest popularity when it comes to dungeons of plus 10 difficulty and lower, as we climb towards the plus 12, 13, and 14, they do continue to maintain a competitive edge. However, even though rogues are being played quite a bit, they do get outshined by only 2 other class options, one of them being the Frost Death Knight, which has been reigning champion out of all the melee classes for a long while. Frost DK, specifically with them adapting more towards the Breath of Sargosa playstyle, together with the Reaper's Mark, they have a very powerful kit. Even though they nerfed Reaper's Mark a couple of times, especially the launch of this patch, Frost Death Knights continue to see a lot of representation, especially at some of the high-end content, and are definitely the most popular pick by far. And what really helps put them apart from some of the other classes is fantastic set of offensives, but also excellent defenses. Normally, Rogue is the most defensive class out there, but Frost Death Knight is actually fairly competitive when it comes to the defensive front. But Frost Death Knights also bring additional utility, which is very important in dungeons, from grips to long ranger troops to AoE blinds and other forms of being able to group up enemies together, which gives them just enough utility for most groups to consider outside of just raw damage, which does make them a little bit more favorable overall. Though the only other class that can really stand toe-to-toe with the Death Knight is primarily the Enhancement Shaman, which has to have some of the biggest AoE damage or output right now in the game. Especially if you play the Tempest Enhancement and you set up your burst correctly. As Enhancement right now, at least based on some of the log information we have based on some of the higher ranked keys, they could almost do triple everyone else's damage. Where Frost Death Knights can maybe at their peak achieve maybe about like 1.9 million DPS, Enhancement Shamans can easily be sitting at around 3 million DPS total for the entirety of a dungeon. Plus, they have that Shaman set of utility from all the different totems, as well as a raid buff, so they basically bring the same utility that is valued in a Restoration Shaman, but you just have a melee DPS option that just does more damage than any other melee in the game, which makes him incredibly powerful as a pickup in most groups. But when it comes to range DPS, I don't think anyone's surprised to see that Augmentation Evokers continues to be one of the more popular picks that's available. Simply, if you're looking for even more group utility from every single playstyle out there, well, Augmentation got it in spades. Generally, they're very strong and have meaningful off-healing when it comes to the group support. So paired together with a Disc Priest that only has damage during short bursts with Atonement, and augmentation helps fill out some of the other issues that come with a disciplined priest. An augmentation between its buff playstyle but also its defenses, it is generally very potent and works out with a variety of different comps and complements many different playstyles out there, most of those playstyles being the ones that are really popular right now in the current meta. Though outside of augmentation, we also got another common offender being the mage, mostly split between frost and arcane, depending on the dungeon. Mages, like augmentation, are probably even more self-sufficient than augmentation, with a wide variety of defensive options, but also self-healing options, sorta, with things like Ultra Time, which doesn't necessarily heal you, just restores you back to a certain health bar. But all in all, they do have plenty of defenses in order to passively or actively reduce or mitigate most outgoing damage. And between Frost and Arcane, you have plenty of different profiles to choose from, between fantastic cleave damage, or focus single target damage, or full out AoE, which allows you to spec out your mage a little bit differently depending on the dungeon and what the group needs at the moment. But the final class has been seeing a lot of popularity in Season 3, even after the recent nerfs, has been the Elemental Shaman. One, because it's a shaman, and shamans bring quite a lot of utility no matter what group they dive into. And two, while their damage did get nerfed in comparison to that of an enhancement shaman, they do still have a very potent damage profile either way that is not that far from enhancement, and it still continues to be somewhat of a competitive option that can be used from range, so they can fill out that ranged DPS slot. So in terms of performance against enhancements, they won't be seeing some of the numbers that those guys see at the top end when it comes to the melee variation of shaman, but it is still decent. But like I said before, majority of the reason why shaman is so good is because of that group-wide utility that they get to bring into every dungeon, which definitely is one of those features that helps keep shaman at the top of their game. But with that being said, that's going to be the entire list of classes that are performing at the top tier of their level when it comes to Mythic Plus dungeons and have found quite a bit of popularity as of the patch 1105. As always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching this update, and I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community if you want to keep up with all the regular updates for the War Within expansion, whether it is current patch updates or potentially future tuning, or even future updates like 1107. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.